I am kicking off the stream. Everyone, pretend we're ready. All right, welcome everybody to the Kubernetes Office Hours, European edition and the UK. I'm George Castro. I'm going to be your host. I'm going to introduce everyone here real quick, and then we'll get started. Why don't we go Ilya, then Booyah, then Jeffrey, and then Bob. Introduce yourselves.
Hey everyone, I'm Ilya from VWorks, joining from our London office, and I be looking forward to your questions today. The areas of expertise of mine are around continuous delivery, networking, cluster provisioning, and various other things too. But we have many other panelists. Who's next?
Yes.
Hey, I'm Puya from Giant Swarm. Areas of expertise mostly around security, user space, and deployments, AWS, Azure, and on-prem.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Sika. I'm with the University of Michigan. I'm in Ann Arbor. My areas of expertise are jobs, batch, cron scheduling, and then CI/CD integration.
I'm Bob Killen, also at the University of Michigan. My specialty is more so in like bare metal deployments, kubeadm, all the crazy stuff that comes along with it, and federation.
Awesome. Well, awesome to have our panelists here today. Like we said, we do this the third Wednesday of every month for those of you who are new viewers. So first of all, feel free in the Slack channel to let us know how the audio quality is. We've put a lot of effort into trying to make this a high quality production. So let us know how the volume is. If someone is too soft or too loud, we will adjust accordingly. Also, because I am on the road this week, I'm not on my usual computer, so we could use your help either tweeting that this is happening right now, or we're going to be plopping messages in Kubernetes-users and Kubernetes-novice to get people who are stuck, bring them here and have this cool little party here and get everybody started. So before we start, I'm gonna just talk you through how we do things around here. All right, so that would be me. Kubernetes Zoom, I'm a bit low. 1 second. Let me just crank up the gain there. How's that? So I'm going to talk about how it works, like why we did this. Basically, Ilya and I were, there's certain ways that you can learn how to use Kubernetes. You can read books and documentation and watch videos, but a really great way to learn is when you go to a conference or a meetup, and then someone actually explains something to you in like a high bandwidth manner, in a method that you can understand it. So one thing led to another. We're like, hey, we should do this where people just come, they ask their questions, and then we've got Kubernetes developers on the line. And this is kind of your hour to ask expert Kubernetes users and developers questions on all sorts of stuff. So first things first, the Slack channel is going to be a judgment-free zone. So if someone shows up and asks a quote-unquote dumb question, there are no dumb questions, just unanswered questions. So let's be a place where we're collaborative and supportive of all of our efforts. I think a lot of us have struggled, getting Kubernetes to do exactly what you want it to do. So let's be supportive in that manner. And while we will do our best to answer your questions, please be aware that we can't like actually SSH into your cluster and look at your stuff. So we try to generally answer questions that are more general or that can teach you something, as opposed to, why is my firewall not working, right? We'll tell you where to look and perhaps the piece of documentation that will help. And worst case, we'll show you what's SIG and where you can go to get help to do that right now. We've had a pretty good success rate with that. I don't think we've actually had a question yet that I'm aware of that we totally were stumped, unless it was someone's restricted network at work, and there's not much we can do for you there. Panelists, you are encouraged to expand on your answers with your experiences and pro tips. So, a lot of this might be just like, hey, look up, this is the pod spec, go read it, right? But feel free to put in, your little tidbits of information that you've gotten, especially when you're running things in production. These are cool little tips that they can get that. And like I said, you can help us as we mention solutions and docs and stuff. Those of you that are in the audience in the channel, as you're searching through things through Google and things like that, as you find URLs, go ahead and just whack them in the channel, and what we'll do is we'll collect them and put them in the show notes and things like that, so that people get recommendations from the community. Like, inevitably, someone will ask, what's a CI/CD tool I should be using? And then everyone goes and pastes in their favorite one, and we come up with a really great list of tools that people might want to try, or cool utilities, things like that. All of these sessions are recorded on YouTube, going all the way back. So what we're trying to do is build this as like a corpus of community expertise. My ideal situation is there's a manager somewhere with his Kubernetes team, and they sit down and watch office hours, and everybody learns and has a good time. It's probably like that in real life everywhere you go. If you are an expert and doing a lot of great things with Kubernetes, you can be on this panel with these fine set of people. You do get a cool Kubernetes water bottle as part of your contribution to the community by sharing your expertise. Soon, as soon as I get approval, we're going to be holding raffles and things like that, so you'll be able to earn a cool Kubernetes t-shirt, stickers. All you got to do is ask questions, be involved, and we're going to make it all fun and get the Kubernetes spinners that everyone wants. And lastly, feel free to hang out in #office hours, right? Like the user channels, how many people are Kubernetes dev right now? Something like 33,000 people. Sometimes it's hard to get, some signal out of that noise. So feel free to make this like one of your home channels to hang out with if you're finding someone who's, maybe struggling with the same thing you're doing. Get to know each other, kind of hang out. This is like our little, we've carved our little corner in the Slack thing to be like, hey, this is where we're going to help new people. Here's where we're going to do office hours type stuff. So you're more than welcome to hang out throughout the rest of the month and things like that. And with that, we'll begin. So the way it works, you're going to type a question in #office-hours. Please preface it with question, like do question, colon, and then blah, so I see it. If I don't see it and accidentally skip it, feel free to just repeat it again. If you see something that's a really good question, do a reaction on it with like a thumbs up or something. So if something is an overwhelmingly great question that everyone wants to know, it's obvious to me, and we could do that. And with that, I'm just gonna panel. How are we feeling? We ready? We ready to do this?
I think we're always ready.
Yes.
Good to go.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna scroll back because we had some questions queuing up before we started here. All right, the first question is going to be from Vincent. He goes, hi, I'm new to Kubernetes and DevOps in general. My question is, what is the most widely adopted community-supported full-feature CI/CD pipeline to use with Kubernetes? We kind of always get this question. Then he goes on to say, is Helm Jenkins the standard? So I know this group has some opinions on CI/CD stuff, so do we just want to take a quick poll of what tools people are familiar with?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm happy to start. I think the latest and greatest thing is actually what Google just released a couple of weeks ago called Scaffold, and I think that is something that should be of interest to anybody. It is actually a pluggable framework. So if you want to use Helm today and play around with that, you're welcome to do that. If you would like to stop using Helm eventually for whatever reason and switch to JSONet perhaps, or KSONet, or anything of that nature, you could do that in the future too. And we will be demoing how it integrates with our CI/CD component Flux, the Git reconciliation operator for the GitOps flow. So watch the space. It's going to be coming shortly. But Scaffold is definitely something you should be looking at.
Okay. Next.
I can say with experience for smaller projects, and if you're a tinkerer, I use Drone CI for my home setup, and it's integrated with Kubernetes quite well. However, for more enterprise applications, what we're using right now is GitLab CI and GitLab. It has some really nice integrations, and if you're doing more than just Kubernetes, I think that tends to, it's a bit more flexible. So.
Mm-hmm.
We're mainly on Circle CI these days, but kind of independent from the CI itself. Most of our customers are using Jenkins. It's big enterprises, so they're used to it. Jenkins also has just released this Jenkins-X, I think it's called, a Jenkins specially for Kubernetes. Haven't looked into it yet, but sounds promising at least. Should be a bit more lightweight, maybe.
Do you mind if I insert opinion? I don't know, I looked at it. It seems a little strange that they kind of try to extend kubectl experience, but that's what it seems like. They kind of add a new command for you to learn, and it sort of relates to kubectl, but it's something else,
Cool.
which I thought is a little bit strange.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Most
And
of
we
my
had-
experiences, sorry.
No, go ahead. After you.
Most of my experience since I work with Jeff is pretty much the same. The big thing is like, don't be afraid to like actually try and look at all the different tools, because there is no like gold standard or anything like that. One person's workflow works for them, might not work for you.
Yeah, to piggyback off of Bob, because we tend to do this, I think the best workflow for everybody is to think of everything as a pluggable piece, so that you can pull something out and try something new, and then get your ideal flow that way.
Yeah, no, that's why I think scaffold is quite a good thing for folks to look into.
I definitely agree.
It actually allows you to plug in different options.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah, I like what you said earlier in the beginning about like if you like Helm, you can use Helm. If you like KSONet, you can use KSONet. It's important.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I wanted to piggyback off Bob's answer is there is no golden standard. It seems a lot of it are sometimes it's like business dependent. You know, like sometimes it feels like whatever CI/CD solution pipeline thing you have is like almost directly tied to your company culture in some cases. So there's no like default one. I've seen everyone make the argument for every single one.
Yep.
So, all right. I hope that answers your question. Any last bits on CI/CD stuff? All right, moving on. MRDMI asks, question, deploying on-prem to RHEL VMs using kubeadmin in an enterprise lab environment. Can I use pre-generated certs for Kubernetes components, or do I work on getting the KCA, quote, trusted? Not likely.
Yes, you can in the external CA mode. It's pretty decently documented in the kubeadm documentation on Kubernetes.io. I think I can pop a link in.
Yeah, after you answer the question, when we move on to the next question, feel free to mute yourself, find the docubit, and then just whack it in there.
Yeah, in general, I would say most people, most customers, or most people I've seen don't have any like trusted CA out there. They just use some self-signed CA.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. And Bob, holler at me if you can't find that documentation, and then we'll circle back.
Put it in there.
Ooh, all right. Okay, moving on. Vlad asks, question. This one's for you, Bob, I can tell. What's the status for federation/multi-cluster setups? What are people using in production, and best practices or advice for managing working with clusters in multiple regions?
So Federation is kind of in a weird place right now. There are people using it in production, but it just got kicked out of Kubernetes into its own repo and has sort of lagged behind the standard Kubernetes release. Most of the work at this point is going into version 2 of it. It is like you can use it in production, but you cannot treat it like a normal Kubernetes endpoint. It's more of like a place where you can, it's like a deployment endpoint, and you let the federation then decide where it's going to place things in there. Not all Kubernetes objects are supported, and there's a lot of other things that you have to do to get it to fully support it. It's pretty decently explained in there, but if you want to know more, I would highly recommend hopping into SIG multi-cluster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then one thing, if someone could Google this and whack it in the channel, is list of Kubernetes SIGs. We have one page that has all the SIGs. And for those of you that aren't aware, all the work in Kubernetes is done by SIGs, special interest groups, around a specific area or a working group. So usually we could start off with a general area, and then you can drill down and find the SIG that's actually working on that feature. And all the SIGs have public meetings that are similar to this on Zoom. You can watch the archives on YouTube and things like that. And that's usually where we defer to when we're looking for a very specific question about a feature. I think you attend those meetings regularly, don't you, Bob?
Yep. I try and get into at least one of the calls every week.
Awesome. All right, Vlad, hopefully that answers your question. Feel free to post a follow-up if there's more detail that you want.
Maybe I can add to that, because we run a lot of global clusters, like global regions, some different regions. And what most of the people I've seen do is just they have something in front, like a DNS Route 53, some GeoDNS in front of a few clusters, so they can load balance to those clusters, and then just deploying to multiple endpoints. If you have a CI pipeline anyway, like CI/CD, having one endpoint or 5 shouldn't be a huge difference. So at least from the deployment side, you can get it, and from the GeoDNS side on the outside, you can get it too. You won't have failover between single services, between clusters. Might be able to use core DNS there.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to add that you could use the core DNS with multiple clusters if you need cross-cluster service discovery, right? So you could say my servers dot cluster one or whatever. I mean, the naming scheme would be potentially a bit more complicated, but essentially, yeah, you could do that. So you could do the cross-cluster service discovery with core DNS, and if you need cross-cluster connectivity, I'm more than happy to tell you more about how that could work with VivNet, because VivNet actually supports that use case very well. And for most part, you don't really need federation control plane unless you have very specific use cases. And yeah, it's like there are a few use cases that the federation control plane is good for, but there are many things you could do without that. And you can implement federation in sort of loosely coupled fashion with cross-cluster network service discovery and networking with, for example, core DNS and VNet.
Mm-hmm.
And as Puya said, for deployment, yeah, once you have a fairly robust CI/CD pipeline, it's not that hard to synchronize configuration to different clusters. And if you take the GitOps approach, that would help you a lot too.
I have some questions for you about the GitOps stuff, but we'll get to that if we run out of questions. Meanwhile, audience, keep adding questions. And we'll get to them. Okay, anything else on federation and multi-cluster? Perfect multi-region unicorns. Okay, all right. Phaser asks, I'm running a cluster of 1.9.x on AWS deployed with COPS. Still struggling with the persistent problem of EBS bang equals read write many. I wonder if there will be a solution to this soon. EFS is too expensive. SASFS or Gluster seem to need some adjustments to the worker nodes. Is there some proposed solution to have a read write many persistence based on EBS? Whoa, have we stumped the panel?
No, I'm trying to remember if a problem I ran into actually was this. Bob and I are probably going to bounce off each other. When we were doing our Kubernetes stuff in AWS, wasn't the problem that you can only mount EBS write to a single node?
Correct. It's a limitation of EBS, at least as far as I know. I know in Google you can mount to one as read write and then read to many.
Right.
But
I probably shouldn't say right in this context.
Yeah.
The way we solved it wound up actually, we weren't using we didn't use EFS. We actually spawned an EC2 instance to act as an NFS server and then mounted EBS to that because that gave us better performance. And we knew it was a hack, but we tried to get something going faster, and it worked for us for a few months. But I think that is a limitation with EBS, not Kubernetes, just because how it handles volumes.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to add that we seem to like many experts here on storage most of the time. Last time we also had a storage question, and there wasn't anybody to help us out with that. Perhaps some of the viewers who may know more about storage would like to join this panel the next time, perhaps. Or, I mean, you can always hop on the panel now if you'd like to. So please do let us know. Yeah. Did anybody want to add anything to this topic?
I'm definitely saving the question because I want to run it past someone. Sometimes Amazon does send a person to come to office hours, but they're all on the West Coast. So.
All right.
Yeah, I guess Amazon would be the best persons to ask for this. Yep. Just as if support comes, they would add it, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
I would imagine some of the storage vendors also have a few answers to this, right?
Okay, we got some awesome information here for everyone from the viewers right now. So Ben Hall likes to add +1 for drone. It's a very nice and straightforward for small projects. Feels similar to GitLab, which is nice. Plug Katacoda has some content to help you understand how to configure it, and then he's plopped a link on how to configure that into the channel. Thanks for that, Ben. And Vlad would like to mention that Jenkins-X-user exists on Slack, as well as #Jenkins-CI on the Kubernetes Slack. So we have channels there that I didn't even know existed, which is nice.
George, your volume isn't quite loud. It sort of you varying volume
okay.
all the time
right.
as you walk around, I guess.
Yeah, I apologize. Very, very excited today. I don't know why. I'm just looking forward to office hours like all month.
It's like getting up at 6 a.m.
Yeah, and then I came over here to the West Coast and then realized that mistakes are made. Vlad wants to add, can Rook do EBS? And he says, looks like no, it's an alternative to it. And then he plops a URL there for something that we probably Phaser should investigate. Anything else?
Yeah,
Any
for
other
Rook,
questions?
you would most probably have SSD instances and then run Rook on those. Although the new M instances don't have SSDs anymore, so
Yeah.
not that many instances with SSDs like local to them anymore.
Yeah, Chris Short wants to add, what exactly is Rook? Can we talk about it a little bit? Because there was a lot of activity around it, KubeCon and things like that. Anyone actually play with it?
Not really outside of just like spinning up locally, but it essentially is a method of spinning up Ceph behind the scenes and managing it in a very Kubernetes way. There's a lot of traction behind it, and I'm really sort of excited to see where the project goes, especially as it can supply both block and object storage.
It's a CNCF project, right?
Yep.
Yes. It's soon to be production ready, I guess, but there is already a lot of users. You've tried it out. We're also kind of looking forward to it being closer to production ready, so people can use it just in more different scenarios. And yeah, basically it does what Ceph does, just with less headaches for yourself, because you don't need to manually set any Ceph up.
Yeah, I almost feel like we should maybe think about having a storage specific office hours at one point.
Yeah.
To kind of get a tour, because I know there's a lot of solutions in the space that people are into. I adjusted my volume there. Let me know how that works for everybody. Phaser would like to ask, could you guys quickly sum up what's new in Kubernetes 1.10? Is 1.10 out? I was on a plane. It's like day to day now, right? Are we?
I think it's still beta.
We pushed it to the 26th, I think.
May I? I mean, the favorite feature.
Yeah.
Shall we do the favorite features first, and then we can do the whole summary? So I think my favorite feature is kubectl debug. I think that'd be really cool.
Yep.
I looked at the rest, and I forgot what the rest was, but kubectl debug was definitely one I'm looking forward to. Anyone else spotted other features?
If you're on Azure, I think there's a lot of new Azure functionality, like VM scale sets coming. Hopefully, there is a last bug we found. Hopefully, that will be fixed by the great team at Microsoft. And other than that, some deprecations might be there, right? Workloads API is V1, but that was already in 1.9. What else is new?
I do know that this is the first release that we've had probably half as many new features as usual. This is a boring.
Yeah.
This is a
stability release.
Boring stability release. So a lot of if you look through the release notes, which are daunting, I think they started off with like 92 pages. It was like this ridiculous bit, and people have been summarizing those and cutting them down and stuff. There's a lot of just raw boringness, which is like what people like, right? But I think we only had 25-ish new features, and usually it's around 50. We just had someone do a graph of this on one of the community meetings on the amount of features coming in. So Oh no, looks like my audio conked out.
No, you're all
No,
right.
you're
Well,
It's
Chris
it's
says
a little
it's
bit
just
low.
Am I still low? What is up with this mic? Hold
it
on.
seems just like really positional.
It'll like make you really loud and then make you kind of quiet.
That is strange. I have the same microphone at home. I'll try not to move. I apologize. Um, and Vlad wants to point that there is a blocker for release, which he's plopped on there for SIG release. Do we have any more questions? Any new users here from Kubernetes-users or -novice?
I actually just found a really nice feature in 110 that makes me excited. They now allow you to collect metrics on custom resources.
Yeah. Although that does work, I think, in 1.9 too. It's just you need to activate the aggregation layer, and then you need to set it up so that Prometheus, for example, could push custom metrics to the aggregation layer. It's a bit complex still.
It's roundabout, yeah.
Are you using it yet, Jeff, or do you plan on using it?
Plans. It goes back to the whole home system.
Yes. So Jeff just did a talk at our meetup on his Kubernetes cluster for his house, and we were kind of making fun of him, but also being very jealous of doing that. So, actually, I did set up a single box Kubernetes cluster after your talk, Jeff, and I'm actively investigating.
Next, you just got to get the failover to the pies.
Yeah. Why am I was like, why am I doing this? So, quick announcement here from Ilya is that for the EMEA region, we have regional channels, which you're welcome to join in EMEA-users and -dev.
That's IMEA. It's like a whole country, you know. IMEA. Yeah. Where is IMEA?
Is that
what's the capital of IMEA?
Is that the EU plus the UK?
No, it's Europe, Middle East, and Asia.
Okay.
No, Africa. Sorry. Yeah, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So time zone wise, you know.
Yeah. Ben shared a really interesting link here for Kubernetes feature OSS tracking board, which is a spreadsheet that has all the features. I totally forgot that existed. Thank you for tossing that in there.
Nice.
Suresh would like to ask, question, can you guys share your opinion on the Kubernetes service catalog, Open Service Broker API? How will it be used in a cluster?
So my eye-opening use case was, because I was really thinking about this hard, how like when Paul and the guys kind of started introducing it, and my eye-opening use case was the integration of in the cloud, so that you can provision basically cloud managed databases, like a managed database in AWS, like an RDS or what have you on Azure and Google Cloud through Kubernetes, and get back like your username and password injected into your pod. It was for me kind of the eye-opening use case.
Anyone else play with service catalog? So I have sat in a few of their meetings in the past, and they're a great bunch of guys. So if you're looking to give them feedback, absolutely just join one of their meetings. They're always looking for user feedback and contributors as well. So, all right, moving on. Angel says, are there any actual real use cases for rooting Kubernetes at your house other than just playing around? See, it started off as a joke, and here we are.
Can I?
No, for me, it's all learning stuff. I mean, I don't like. How do you? I don't know. I can't see myself. It's not like I have a power distribution unit at home, and if like one of my nodes loses power, like the whole house loses power, right? So I don't know what I would actually use it for. So I do it for learning, Jeff. I know you.
So in 30 seconds or less, I run my own custom DNS, and I run a bunch of local services that my wife and friends and I use. And so if those go down, it's not the end of the world, but it makes me mad. So like I have my own Git server at home and all of those different kinds of things. If DNS goes down, the internet is essentially down for all intents and purposes. So having highly available services at your house like that kind of makes sense. And I kind of see this ecosystem moving, both in the server server room, but also at home with consumer grade applications and services. So that's my little passionate, crazy idea.
Yeah. Think about using Helm charts for all your fun home applications.
Exactly.
Yep.
We should get there.
Yeah. I remember for me, that's how I learned Linux. I set up a mail server at home back when you could set up mail servers and not have everything blacklist you. So I do it mostly to learn. I kubadmin blow away my thing and just reinstall it every other week, and I'm just like I kind of do it for that kind of familiarity as well. Okay, MRDMI keeps asking, we are looking at Rook/Ceph for on-prem. We'll still look at it, but could performance be an issue? Is this overkill? Is there something simpler/faster to get PVCs solved for lab work?
So, well, we don't necessarily run Ceph in production. We do have a very large Ceph cluster. The big thing is look at Ceph, look at the performance requirements around Ceph, and look at how you're going to set that up. It really, if you're going to be setting it up with one or two nodes, you're not going to get good performance out of it. You definitely need to invest in your storage infrastructure to get decent performance with Ceph.
And if you're working in just a lab environment, typically NFS will be more than
enough. Yeah.
All right. Any other comments on Ceph? All right, Ivan, how you doing? Ivan asks, how do you manage your users, certs, tokens, SSO, Google Azure integrations, AWS Authenticator? Those are all options.
OIDC as much as possible.
Yep. And Keycloak, Dex. There's a bunch of different options out there for that sort of thing.
Yeah. Have you tried?
Yeah.
Did you try a bunch
we use a lot of certs.
Okay.
And I mean, we have Azure for one customer. We're looking into SSO, but I would try to go with something OIDC and then maybe have something in between like Dex, Keycloak, Auth0 or something to abstract away your ID management provider or be able to federate a few providers into, because you can only have one OIDC integration in the API server.
And if you're typing in the channel, please mute whoever that was. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. It's all good. Nobody misses my mechanical keyboard this week.
Yep.
All right. So we got links to Keycloak there, Dex, G Suite. I feel like we're missing one.
Keycloak. Where was that? Oh no, you linked it. Never mind.
Okay. I'm on top of this.
I could add Auth0 if you want a hosted solution.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We're trying that out currently.
Yeah, toss a link
in
there. That sounds. Oh, cool. Interesting. More questions from the group. Let's see what we got going on in Kubernetes-users here. See if I can. Can someone who's muted plop our little announcement in the channel again? That would be useful. More questions. People typing. Phaser would like to ask, ping identity may also be worth checking out. And Bob, you added this Harbor Master?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy how many auth solutions out there.
Yep.
Yeah. So what led you to settle on your solution, just out of curiosity?
Our solution is kind of all over the place because we have a lot of different clusters and various different phases. Mm-hmm. Keycloak is our main one, just because it integrates well with everything else. I believe that's also what powers OpenShift behind the scenes.
Okay. All right. We definitely have time for more questions. Let's see, anyone in Novice? Novice is kind of empty today.
There might be something on Stack Overflow. I don't know.
Yeah, if someone wants to grab a question from there. Sorry. Normally I do all the fetching, but I
I'll
feel like
check.
this stream is hanging on for dear life. As far as well, there's a drop port in here, but I forgot my USB Ethernet dongle, so I'm actually streaming over wireless. So I'm actually sweating profusely that this whole thing will fall apart at any minute. But it seems the stream seems to be hanging on there. So while we're waiting for questions, I wanted to ask you, Ilya, with things like Scaffold, how does that work into your little GitOps world?
So well, essentially one simple way to do this would be to let Scaffold run your build and then push the images to the registry. And once that's done, you could just wait for those images to sync, at least with our implementation of Git reconciliation operator, which is vFlux on GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
Paste the link to that momentarily, but essentially, we just pick up the images from the registry. However, there's a little lag that you might expect there. So the integration that I'm intending to work on would involve a webhook from Scaffold to the operator that lets it know that notifies the operator that new image is available before the polling interval ticks in, right? So I would essentially just let it deploy straight away. So that's one of the integrations that I have in mind right now. There's a little bit more to it that I'm thinking of doing, but it's all in flux at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, so at the moment you could just use Scaffold to do the local development, and then also use it for production without any with a no op step in deploy step. Right?
Okay, and then Ben Hall wanted to add that Pusher pushed an example too, and then there's a link of a Kubernetes auth example there, and we'll make sure we put all of these in the show notes. So, Mr. Ball CBS, how do you manage local versions of all your tools? COPS, Kube Control, KubeSeal, etc. In particular, when you have multiple clusters of varying versions, 1.7x, 1.8x, all the different point releases. Is it all manual, or there are tools for managing the tools?
Well, as far as kubectl goes, it's pretty good at being backwards compatible. But for anything else, I usually have a whole series of containers with the different toolings mapped to specific versions, and I just mount, what I need into there and go to town.
So like, for example, gcloud has an official container image that you can use. I'm not entirely sure about all the other ones, but so definitely kubectl is pretty good at backward compatibility. There were very few things I saw that broke. Not really, actually. I'm struggling to recollect. And it is also always possible to use older version of kubectl with a newer version of the cluster API. It's just that sometimes some features may not be enabled, right? So like flags may be missing, or there could be like a validation related thing that bails out. But I'm forgetting to. I'm struggling to remember specific examples right now.
Yeah, I remember just between, I'm not sure which versions it was, 1.7 and 1.8, there was some more breaking changes in between. But yeah, basically, if you run it in a container, or if you're on Mac and use brew, you can brew switch, or like some colleagues have aliases just for different versions.
That's what I do.
Just, all the hacks.
Whatever the old Unix
George, I
release,
think you
that's
muted.
what I'm doing. Oh, sorry.
Yep. Now you're back.
All right. So moving on. Joel Speed wants to mention the first part of my SSO series is available on the new stack now. The next two parts coming Friday and next Friday. Happy to discuss if anyone has particular questions. And then he plopped a link to that. So make sure you check that out on the newstack.io. Ivan goes on to ask, okay, if we talk about Scaffold, here goes another question. How do you do your local development with Kubernetes? Telepresence, Minikube, mounting volumes, etc., etc. We just go around the table, I guess. How do you do it?
I'm actually writing a blog post about that. Watch
Okay.
this space. Well, I'm writing one for Kubernetes blog together with Michael Hasselblatt,
Okay.
who's not here today. But yeah,
Can you tease what you do?
we only
Is it a
started.
surprise?
There's still a bit of work to do.
Yes.
Trying to make it unopinionated is probably the biggest challenge for me.
Sure.
Because I could easily tell you my favorite way of doing things, but that may be not as easy to adopt for somebody.
But yeah, what do you guys do?
I think we use a lot of Minikube. Some of us use development containers inside a Kubernetes cluster. So developing right on the cluster kind of and against it. We don't do a lot of kind of mounting volumes and like having an editor on that mount and reloading a container. That's usually still build the thing and run it in a new Minikube or so.
Mm-hmm. And then Bob and Jeff?
Minikube.
I use a lot of Minikube, but for some things, I actually have like different Vagrant builds. Just because Minikube doesn't support some things, I think it was like pod presets or pod security policies or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And even passing the flag wouldn't enable them. So that's usually when I pop over to Vagrant and just spin something up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also tend to sometimes just go online and have a cluster in some of our installations just because it's so much easier than Minikube that sometimes might break. Like I have a colleague that DNS breaks on his Minikube like all the time.
Oh, same here. It's very frustrating.
Are you folks using Linux or Mac?
Mac.
OS X.
Have you tried Docker for Mac yet? Kubernetes Docker for Mac?
I have not.
It is really good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been using that quite happily. I even forgot to mention it.
Same here.
Yeah, it showed up if you're on Windows as well, on the Edge channel on Windows. It's there also, and I gave that a shot, and it worked. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it's a bit more stable and more recent in its way of setting up than Minikube.
Yeah. My coworkers do a mix. We have a little NUC lab over here that our support folks use, and then all the clouds, and myself, Tim St. Clair, bare metal, just a kubeadmin rack in a closet somewhere that I routinely blow away.
Your basement.
My basement, yes. Let's see. Another one. Ivan wants to add, I do that too. Dev in a kube cluster in GKE normally. That's how Ivan does it. All right, next question. Sean wants to ask, how do you manage persistent connections between services and also locality between how close the services are to one another?
So I guess at least as far as locality goes, generally it shouldn't matter too much in terms of, one Kubernetes cluster is generally tied to a specific location.
Mm-hmm.
If you're diving back into federation, that's a whole different story. But in general, like location hasn't mattered too much in that regard.
Mm.
Yeah, except for some latency sensitive applications where you'd like to talk to, the thing in your rack or whatever. And so some work has been done in that area actually. I forgot what it's called. Is it service topology aware routing? Yeah, topology aware routing is the feature name at the moment, I think. And yeah, that would allow you to say like, hey, I have this app that wants to talk to service, but it would rather talk to the one that is on the same box or in the same rack, rather than going all the way to the next hop.
Yeah, and then Sean, if you could just follow up exactly what you mean, like are we talking?
Yeah, maybe also some affinity rules. I would always try to use just soft affinity because hard affinity will make it very hard for the scheduler if you have smaller nodes. And then updates might break with hard affinity or anti-affinity. We've seen them all, so try to keep them soft and then maybe you might need like a rebalancing script if you have lots of up and down scaling of cluster sizes.
Yeah, Sean, feel free to post a follow-up exactly. I want to know exactly what you mean by close. Like, are we talking a building over or you know, like
I've
physical?
seen like people asking for the same machine, like
Okay.
that close.
Okay.
And, but it always depends on your use case, all right?
Yeah. Comrade in asks, I'm looking for a way to monitor resource consumption in my cluster. Looking at the nodes in the Kate's dashboard just shows memory and CPU requests / limits, but not the real value. Is there something like a Kubernetes HTOP or dashboard?
Prometheus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just went right to like the biggest one. Just no. Okay.
It might as well be the Kubernetes metrics dashboard.
Okay.
Yeah. By now, I mean,
There's kubectl on top.
Yeah.
But it needs hipster, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 But it also doesn't show much more than memory and CPU. Right.
Yeah.
By now it needs, I think, and it still needs Heapster, not the metric server. It's going to move to metric server very soon, which is Heapster in a different packaging.
Right.
It's Heapster with a mask on.
Yep.
There's a way to set things up if you want to do horizontal pod autoscaling without using Heapster and all that stuff. My colleague has documented that. If anyone is interested, I could pop that link over actually. And so we're talking about that, but this is kind of advanced stuff. So if you actually want to set up, basic monitoring and look at a dashboard of, like the kind of the basic metrics you want to know about Prometheus. Sorry, about your Kubernetes cluster. Prometheus isn't that easy to start with. So that's one thing. I don't exactly know whether perhaps when you install the Helm chart, you get a fairly reasonable set of things, but you still need to do quite a bit of work to get a Grafana dashboard and things like that hooked up. And I can't really suggest anything other than our product for that purpose. It's the cloud is hosted Prometheus. I wish there was an alternative that I could suggest that is easy to use, but right now that's all I'm aware of. Everything else requires quite a bit of gluing and stitching together. Unless you folks know of anything that just sort of works out of the box.
I mean, it's always with the dashboards. Yeah. With the dashboards, it's always hard because like there's no nice open dashboards out there, and you need to build your own, and then you need to know Grafana and Prometheus queries, and then you need alerts. So maybe a good entry, like seen people use Weave Cloud, and you have unlimited storage too, right? That's a big benefit.
Yeah, we have out-of-the-box dashboards now too. So yeah, and it's 100% Prometheus compatible. So it is essentially based on an open source project, which is on GitHub also. But but the UI is somewhat proprietary.
I'm gonna give that a shot. I knew it existed, but I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. So, let's see some more opinions here. Vlad says Minikube works for small, talking about local development. Minikube works for small isolated experiments. If you use it for serious dev work, you have to mock a lot and you have to maintain a completely separate environment with separate bugs, which is hell. So that's just a warning there. And Dims, how you doing today? He goes, I use hack/local upcluster.sh script for my dev workflow. It builds Hypercube and starts all my services. Everyone's favorite directory in the project, the hack.
Yeah, but that's more of a contributor one, right? And users, for end users, it's not as user friendly.
Yes.
As Docker for Mac would be, or Minikube.
Yes, please do not use that for work. Don't use things in that for like your work production cluster. Sean says topology-aware routing sounds great. I'll look into that. Thank you. Thanks for coming. WebWorst pasted in the Prometheus operator, which you might want to investigate here for setting that up. YP28 wants to add that the Prometheus operator includes some pre-configured dashboards for Grafana as well. Thanks for that. Follow-up, Sean says, ideally the same box. We have a proprietary login daemon that are shared between pods that are on each host. Also, the idea of these global packages that all app services need access to. Ideally, moving to Fluentd or similar, but these use their own protocol. Any other comments now? We have some more information there from Sean.
Then you could target like node placement with labels.
Yeah. So you could make your logging daemon choose the nodes that are local to its node.
Mm-hmm.
Select them somehow.
Mm-hmm. Okay, 10-minute warning. So if you have questions, get them in now. We're going to finish in about 5 minutes here. And then we'll go again in about 6 hours for the US folks. Waleed wants to ask, hi, I would like to play with the HPC scheduler Slurm under Cube. It has one role as a master and others as agents. Should I use stateful set for the first role for the master? And every time I would like to scale the nodes, I need to run reconfigure on the master. How would I go about doing this?
So this is actually Bob's in my wheelhouse because we work in an HPC shop. We're like the outliers. Yeah. So we actually wrote an integration with Kubernetes and Slurm that we dubbed Slurmnetes. I have linked it in the chat. I could go in depth, except I have a feeling this is not going to apply to like all but maybe 2 people that are interested in this.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was a work in progress that I did over the holidays. So it's not exactly production. In fact, it's not even really alpha.
It's a few months old now, right?
Yeah. The other thing that I would like to link to any other HPC type people is an SSH session gateway that Bob wrote, and I just kind of sat over his shoulder and told him what to do for a little bit of it. But with those 2 combined, we're actually looking to take HPC workloads and move them towards Kubernetes. There's also another project that I'm trying to build out that is HPC, but completely in Kubernetes. It's not trying to shoehorn some other project to use Kubernetes. It's a Kubernetes native HPC scheduler, but there's only so many hours in the day.
Wow, what are the chances someone asked that specific question?
Tell me about
their
it.
first day. That's perfect. That's why we have these meetings. All right, Waleed, hopefully that'll give you some information there to get started. Thanks so much. Any final questions before we wrap it up and call it a month? Thanks so much, everyone, for attending. As we say, we can do these basically as often as we want. Right now, we're doing it once a month. The only limiting factor is getting people on the panel and questions. So if you have, I think we're probably about due to do like a storage one, I think. So I'm going to investigate
definitely,
doing a storage one, getting
Mm-hmm.
all the vendors to show up, because I'm sure everyone has questions about their SANs and expensive equipment.
Definitely. And I wanted to note that we also doing one session at KubeCon.
Yes.
We'll be doing a live session at KubeCon. So those of you who are looking to come to KubeCon, let us know. I don't know, George, what are we doing there exactly? Are we gonna like lock ourselves in a room, or are we gonna be in front of an audience and pass a mic around, or how are we gonna do this?
It's gonna be just like this, except either I'll be running around with a microphone to the audience questions, or we'll have like a place for you to stand in line and then ask your question. And it's literally gonna be one long table. We'll probably have more people on the panel, to make sure we're more well-rounded.
Sounds like we're going to be there all day long, George.
Yep.
All day long. I think it's time about how much did we ask for? Did we get our full 3 hours? I asked for like 3 hours.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, 3 hours is good.
I don't have much to do, so
we should bring some sandwiches.
You need like a stump the panelist award or something like that.
Yeah, it's a.
Yeah, and there are also some workshops happening at KubeCon, aren't there? Are you doing anything, George? There's a Heptio workshop, I think.
There is a Heptio workshop that someone else on one of our teams is doing, but mostly the day before on May 1st. If you Google the Kubernetes Contributor Summit, we actually have. There's going to be like sessions for people who are existing contributors where they'll talk about the features they're working on, whatever. But we also have a new contributor track that I want to talk about, which will have people saying, hey, here's how you work through your first pull request. Here's how our GitHub workflow works, because ours is different because we're so big and it's not a traditional go to GitHub and click buttons style workflow. So we're going to go that. We're kind of tailoring content for new contributors, for people that, let's say you're an advanced user and maybe you're ready to kind of maybe fix your first bug, or get more involved instead of just consuming Kubernetes. So if you're going to be a KubeCon and you're interested on kind of leveling up, crossing over from user to developer, ideally this would be a great place to go. We have a draft schedule that's currently empty, but as KubeCon shows up, we're going to have sessions on there. All the sessions will be recorded and put on YouTube anyway, so even if you can't physically make it to KubeCon, the information will be there for you. So that should be...
I wanted to add, that we are doing a workshop also, which you can register ahead of the time. And if anybody is interested, you can ask me if you're trying to figure out what workshops you're going to. I'm happy to talk to people on Slack about what we have to offer, and
it's really fun. I love Copenhagen. I'm really looking forward to it.
That should be really fun. Yeah. I was there during DocCon. It was really good. It was a little cold, and now it's going to be nice and like spring, really.
Yes.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Definitely wish I could make it out there.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it'll be Seattle after, so we'll be good.
Yep.
Okay. Now I'm going into
Shanghai.
Oh, yes, that's right. I always forget that one. All right, and with that, we're going to go into the outro real quick. Thanks to everyone who tuned in to listen and ask your questions. This really helps us out. Thanks to our panel for showing up. Your expertise is incredible, and I would like to thank the following companies for allowing these fine engineers to volunteer their time. So as a group, with all the office hours, Amazon, Bitnami, Giant Swarm, Heptio, Liquid Web, Northwestern Mutual, Packet.net, Pivotal, Red Hat, Weaveworks, VMware, and now the University of Michigan. Thanks, guys. And like I said, if you have any ideas of cool giveaways and things that we're going to do, I want to do spinners, T-shirts, all sorts of cool stuff to kind of, so you can ask your question on office hours, and then you get to wear the T-shirt on Monday as you heroically fix whatever it is problem you had at work. And as always, feel free to hang out in the channel. We'll be around. I'm always idling in that channel. And with that, unless any final words from the panel.
See you in a few hours.
Yep.
See you in a few hours. All right. Thanks everyone, and everyone have a great weekend.
See ya.
Bye.
Take care.